So, has Dennis Allen finally figured out how to be an NFL head coach? Who knows? Scott and I are here to talk about it. I'm Tim. That's Scott. Let's talk Saints. So, over the years, Scott and I have um, just been not very happy with Dennis Allen as a head coach for the most part. Um, and we picked a couple of our favorite or most aggravating, or I don't even know how to define it, interviews of the stuff that he showed while talking to the media, to the press, or whatever, that just we question largely, why is this guy our head coach? But don't worry, we're going somewhere with that. But the two we have in mind, the two that we've complained about most over the years was, and this is the first one, the Week 7 Arizona game in 2022.
I think our tackling was shoddy again. I thought offensively we did some good things. We moved the ball. We scored some points. The 3 takeaways were killers in the game. And look, we got to fix some of these issues. That's my responsibility to get these things fixed. We haven't been able to do that. We got to get some guys back healthy, which hopefully over these next 10 days, we'll be able to get a few of these guys back and give us some more guys to get out there and help us try to win a game. So that's all I got.
What's your biggest concern regarding this team, the way it's playing right now?
My biggest concern is that we haven't had, the health of our players. We got into this game tonight, and Roby goes out in the first series, and so. We're really down to 2 corners, and this is a big, 11 personnel team that's going to throw 3 wide receivers out there, and made it challenging.
Okay. And I wrote it on my crap note because this was total crap the way this started. His opening statement, he's talking about shoddy tackling. He mentions the 3 turnovers. Oh, the offense did some good things, but we had 3 turnovers. Failed to mention 2 of them were pick sixes. Threw Arizona 12 points right off the bat. And then he's, we got to fix this stuff, and that's on me. That's my responsibility. Do y'all have any questions? First question, I really wish I knew who asked it because I'd like to give her props. As a follow-up to that, well, what concerns you most? Despite the fact you omitted some of the problems that were going on in that game that caused us to get our tails kicked in the desert. So what's the biggest issue? Injuries. Oh, Roby got hurt, so we were down to 2 corners. So all of a sudden, the turnovers, the missed tackles, and the bad coaching, the bad scheme, because we showed up not even ready to play that game that night. And on the whole nation, national TV saw us just get our heads bashed in by a team we should have beat. But it's injuries. He's going to blame injuries. 31 other teams by week 7 had the same problem, Dennis. No. Don't go there.
Players normally take on the persona, or whatever you want to call it, of their coach in a good team or a bad coach team. and it's obvious. Like this press conference is him not knowing where to go. I mean, and all the things that he talked about, and then say injuries, and you said it perfectly. 31 other teams have injuries. You have a 53-man roster. You only have 2 cornerbacks. I mean, there's a whole list of things. It's like, well, should you have more cornerbacks or should you have more? Well, this is a whole lot of answers. This reminds me of like when you're a child and you're arguing with your parents. All you want to do is change the subject. All you want to do is change the subject, and that's all he was doing was bouncing around on different subjects. So people like me, you, and all those Saints fans and media could be like, "What is he doing?" It would that interview confuses me. It aggravates me, but it confuses me more than it aggravates me.
And you and I are on the phone, and we're I was hurling F-bombs at the screen as soon as I heard that little injury, and it just kind of got progressively worse. And that was a persona that started all his press conferences that year, for the rest of that year, most of last year. Just it was like he was in denial. There was no accountability. He had every opportunity to assume accountability, and he at the beginning in his opening statement, and he started to. And then he just, injuries, like exactly like you're saying, we got to change subject. We got to move on. Didn't like it then. And you're right. The team is going to pick on kind of the persona of its head coach. So all of a sudden he's not really holding himself accountable.
And that's not who we are. That's not how we operate. We should have taken a knee. So I want to apologize to them. Because look, we're all like, we got a good rivalry, and it's a heated rivalry, but there's a way we go about doing our business. And
so there's week 18 right there last year in 2023, the famous apology to the Atlanta Falcons. And not really worried about, we all know what happened, who's to blame, whose fault it was, any of that stuff. Because the takeaway on this that got kind of glossed over was the team mutiny against him. He had a team-wide mutiny. Now, coming out early and addressing it was the right thing to do. Hopefully he was in the locker room, but I don't think this happened in the way it should have happened. But got in the locker room, made his feelings known to them. I think that part he did do, but couldn't go, hey, this stays in-house. And if you have to talk about it to the media, here's our story. We're sticking to it. I'm going out there and taking the heat, but make no mistake about it, this is never going to happen again. There will be no more mutinies. And instead of apologizing to Atlanta, because that's where we had the problem, that this is the appropriate time for one of those generic apology, non-apologies. We're sorry that happened and it may have offended someone. And then you end it with, we're never talking about it again. Just like you tried to kind of try to do, but it just festered because it was not handled correctly. And I always got the feeling this part of this was he was more worried about how the outside looking in was going to perceive this than the actual effect of what was going on his team.
Yeah, 31 other teams besides the New Orleans Saints in NFL, and I wouldn't apologize to any of them, especially not the Atlanta Falcons, especially not the Dirty Birds. When you get mutiny, something weird is going on, and I think that's causing the shift that we kind of talk about a little bit. We see something, we just can't put our fingers on it correctly. But I think the last video in this video explained what's going on.
I think this was a culmination, I think, of what happened the last few weeks of the season, on the verge of the playoffs and all that. And we won most of our games, but the fan base was we have had enough. A lot of the media that used to run cover for the organization and for Dennis Allen, I wouldn't say they started really ripping into him, but the protection wasn't there anymore. So in the way that what I think happened is, and I'm quite sure the organization looked at this after it was all over. Say this was Sunday night, Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, probably somewhere around Monday or Tuesday. They were sitting there going, yeah, we just did not handle that correctly. By that time it was too late. You brought up the point when we were when this video that we're doing right now is about 3 weeks in the making, and you brought up the point initially. Goes the changeover I've seen from him from this this right here from this very press conference, of which this is one I did not watch the end of because I was hurling F-bombs. I was starting to get a migraine. I just had to turn it off. And that was from the jump. But you brought up when we started talking about this 3 weeks ago, you're like, did they hire a PR firm? Was your question to me. And I was like, I don't want to be cynical, but maybe because we're seeing a different attitude towards everything. And we picked out one. There was actually a couple of videos we could have used, but there was one we picked out recently at the end of OTAs that we're like, yeah, it's a night and day different attitude than these two extreme examples, but you would be hard pressed over 2 years to go find any press conference he gave that was worth a crap. I think it was the final week of OTAs, the week before minicamp. And there was a lot of what after we had watched this when we kind of decided to cut some of the questions from this. It's not all of them, but just about 9 or so points in here that kind of sum up, I think, where he was the last 2 years to maybe where he's eventually heading now.
Wait for like in the film room.
Well, look, here's the reality. When you're standing on the sideline, you don't see every single thing that happens, on the field of play. And so, you're really trying to correct the things that you specifically see. And every coach has their eyes trained to look at, in a certain area. And then obviously as a head coach, you're kind of overseeing the whole thing. So, but yeah, I think, as a base rule, if we see it, then I think, instant corrections, instant feedback is the best way to teach.
That's what was Chris.
Sometimes I wondered over the last 2 years if he was truly correcting something when he saw it. There was again, Atlanta, that whole, I really felt like, because, and this is why this is the second part of that. We've got no clips of this. Once the media went into the locker room and started questioning players, it's like, that was my question mark on that, on the whole thing is he really does have a mutiny because now they're telling stories about something that should have been kept in-house. And that should have been the correction in the locker room. Guys, we don't do this. We don't. And that needed to be like the one voice coming out of the locker room instead of some players supported it. Some were like, whatever. You got the story of who was to blame, I guess, from Jameis, who's no longer here, but I think he was out the door at that point anyway. It was just a mess. And I don't think anything's getting corrected. And to carry that a step further, when you watch him play for 2 years, 34 total games under Dennis Allen, you saw lots of mistakes going all the way back to that first clip at Arizona. Turnovers, missed tackles, name it. Even the stuff he didn't talk about that we knew that happened. You not always in the same game and not always at the same time, but you kept seeing the same mistakes
over and over
at some point in the season, over and over and over again.
The one thing from this clip you just showed, yes, I like the things he's talking about and like the honesty and just where everyone's at. Look at that video from beginning to end. The confidence he has up there on that microphone compared to what he have. It's like I know you talked about who did they bring in, yada yada. He changed in some kind of way answering questions between last year and between this video. And it's just apparent to me. I never seen him up there controlling the actual thing with confidence. That to me is taking a step forward in coaching.
I hope so. Because that's, and again, in all fairness, how he is in the locker room and how he is on the practice field when the media isn't allowed to be there may be different than what he portrays in a press conference. However, the fan base especially, and some of the media, the way they're going to report stuff, that's the only connection they're making. So when you're looking disorganized, and yet I say weak, because he looked weak last in that Atlanta, very weak. So when that happens, we question, is this just kind of flowing through the locker room? Is the same stuff that we question? Maybe he's got a handle on it, but it doesn't exactly give us confidence. And I suspect there's some players that may not have total buy-in when you've got a head coach doing stuff like that.
Then just now that you've seen the team kind of get a chance to work in the offense a little bit, how do you think that the transition is going to the
Yeah, look, I think every day, we're making a little bit of progress, and I think that's what's important right now. What's important right now is that we come out here, we get a chance to meet on it, install it, we get a chance to work it, we get a chance to go back in and make the corrections, and then the next time we get to that, hopefully we're not making the same mistakes that we made, in the previous practice. And that's really the basis of how we teach, and we're trying to eliminate repeat mistake offenders. So now go ahead.
Sure. So what have you noticed with that, with Spencer Rattler? He had a couple interceptions the first 2 sessions.
Yeah. Look, part of it out here during this time and even in training camp is figuring out what you can do and what you can't do, right? And if I never take a chance, all right, then I never really know what I can or can't do, in our league. And I think you find out here that the windows close a little bit faster than they do in college. And so it's all part of the learning curve. And so, look, I'm encouraged by what I see out of him. And certainly, there's a lot of improvement left to be had, but I think he's making some good progress.
I didn't know they had a teaching method the previous 2 years. You couldn't have proven that by me. They damn sure didn't talk about it a whole lot.
No.
And put it out there, which this is, and I've talked about this, you have to before, on just the honesty coming out of the organization that we didn't feel like we had the last 2 or 3 years. Well, this is just kind of being honest. Look, this is how he's actually kind of an insight. This is how we're teaching, this is the process we're going through here in OTAs and minicamp. And he said, even in some part in training camp, that how we're going to get through the process, because the very end of that statement was, because we want to eliminate repeat offenders. And I'm like, that would be great, because in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of repeat offenders and stuff in, missed tackles, whatever the whole, yes, let's eliminate the mistakes so we can eliminate repeat offenders. And I say that jokingly, but at times I don't know if that was really being done. He had a buzzword of accountability the last 2 years, but I rarely felt like I saw it anywhere on the field. I think maybe some of the veteran players could hold some players accountable, but I don't feel like the coaching staff ever did.
The way he said same mistakes and trying to prevent repeat offenders, this whole clip to me is one big explanation of the word insanity.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to, yes, like we've been watching for 2.5, however long he's been coached, where players, like you talked about 2 interceptions, you talk about fumbles, you talk about bad coverage, you talk about poor tackling. That's, I guess, indirectly insanity. If you don't correct it on the reps in the practice field, they will make it to the field. So him starting at the place where you practice can only lay the groundwork for what happens in games. And I just hope it's not just a thought in my head or your head or whatever the heck it is. It's almost like getting the problem from ground zero instead of trying to catch it in the middle of a game, because you're not going to catch stuff like this in the middle of a game. I mean, it's already embedded into their thoughts at that point.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there. I never thought of that. It's maybe not even in the middle of a game, but in the middle of the season, then they're trying to fix problems that never should have existed, because they should have started correcting it in the off season when the whole process started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could see that as being valid. And I'm gonna tie something in too that when I was watching John Hendricks and Ross Jackson's podcast a couple of weeks ago, that to be brought into that point was they repeatedly talk about how this mini camp and OTAs, they saw a just totally different vibe than the previous couple of years. So you may be on to something there. The vibe may be some players going, hey, they're finally teaching us and showing us how to fix crap when we're doing it wrong. So maybe we'll get a little better. We can win more games.
Coaching, no matter what level, you always try to make your players better.
You guys have said your early message to the team this offseason was kind of just keep your head down and work. Don't worry about anything outside the building, expectations. I mean, can you kind of expand on that? What was your message to them about that?
Well, look, here's the deal. You don't control anything that goes outside of this building. You really only control what we're doing inside the building. And really the message was, let's don't worry about what the results are going to be. Let's just worry about the process, because the results take care of themselves if you put the work in. And that's really where our focus has been. And I think our guys have done a pretty good job of, minimizing distractions, focusing on the task at hand here while we're in the building, and taking advantage of these opportunities to get better.
As your head coach, is that something you're always dealing with? Noise?
Yeah, look, everybody has an opinion on everything, and everybody has the ability to make their opinion public, and that's never going to change. And so nobody has any control over what the outside opinion is, or how they choose to voice that opinion. And so let's don't worry about things that we don't control. Let's worry about these things that we do control.
Do you care that expectations outside the building are low for this team? It seems like
I could care less what the outside expectations are outside of this building. We're just gonna keep going to work every day, and I like our process, and I like what we're doing right now.
I'm gonna have to start with the last part of that first, because again, we're going to tie back into Atlanta, which I felt like that whole fiasco kind of started because they weren't addressing or focusing the right part, which was the freaking team mutiny. And it doesn't matter if it was one player or 5 players or 8 players. Ultimately, at least 10 or so were involved on the last play that went against their head coach's, I won't even say wishes, because it really wasn't an order. No, kneel the ball, okay? No matter how you feel about the whole situation, that's what he said. That's what you do. He's the boss, whatever. But I think the result of it was he was worried about what other people thought, or the organization, whoever's decision, even if that came from somebody higher down than him, going, hey, you need to go out there and apologize. Whoever it was, collectively or individually or whatever, a little worried about the wrong thing. Worry about your team and your organization first, not the feelings of the guys you just beat the PP out of. Okay.
Yeah.
So I hope he's like it. I think the noise, when you're in the situation that they are, you have to avoid the noise. You have to not listen to the noise, but you have to acknowledge it's there. It's sort of like when the angry mob comes to Dr. Frankenstein's castle, he doesn't have to pay attention to all the words he says. He just acknowledges, hey, there's a bunch of angry people here right now. I have to go deal with it. I think that's kind of the point that whole little lead up to. That's really, look, the process, control the stuff we're going to control on the field, off the field, in the front office, even the fan base, because and I have to, the chuckle point in all this when he was talking about, look, nowadays everybody has an opinion and they can put it out there any way you want. And I'm like, sort of like Scott and I are doing now.
When he said I could care less in earlier, a couple of sentences before he said the process, I started thinking about rat poison and Nick Saban, and I'm not trying to call Dennis Allen Nick Saban, so please don't get that stuck in anyone's head. I'm just saying that some coaches, whenever people start talking about processes and I could care less, that's him indirectly saying it's going to stay in-house.
Yeah.
Everything's going to stay in-house. Like, I could care less what anybody else thinks. Not that I ever think that people should, I guess, frequently be that way. But when it's a football team and those 53 guys on that roster, it needs to stay in-house between those coaches and between those guys. Him mentioning the process is one of the other things I think that's possibly headed in the right direction.
I'm pumped he's acknowledging they have a process, because I
Yeah.
often wondered that for the last 2 years. Like, do we have any idea of what we're trying to accomplish, or in anything? And sometimes, no, it seemed like we didn't. But this whole I'm gonna use the process word. This whole process so far that we've seen, there seems to be a method to everything that they're trying to do, which
Yep.
is refreshing. Haven't seen that in the longest time. I hate to keep invoking the word of Sean, but when Sean was here, you could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end, I even questioned Sean was doing it, to be honest. Definitely have questioned the last 2 years, but I'm glad to see, because whether you call it the process or do your job or what, all the coaches have their own little catchphrases, but they're all
Mm-hmm.
talking about the same thing, which he basically said, hey, worry about the stuff you can control. Control the things you control, work hard on that. And like, that's not a sports metaphor. That's kind of life in general,
Mm-hmm.
but specifically, I don't you couldn't improve it by me anytime in the last 2 years that anybody was preaching that, and very few players were, if they were listening or paying attention to it.
All coaches have a life cycle, have a like a length or whatever, and you can see possibly a coach. You always talk about players learning and growing. You're looking possibly at a coach growing by saying these things, the way he's acting. Either that or he's like pumping sunshine, which I don't really think is happening. I just think he's seen something. And as a player grows and gets better, a coach can grow and get better. Sometimes it doesn't happen all the time, but I think it's possibly the beginning. We'll see.
I think it's all encompassing. It's cumulative. Obviously, it's like when you go to college, all right, and you take a few quizzes. You know, you go to class, you study, you take a quiz, right? There's a weight that goes to that, right? That's like what practice is. And then all of a sudden you get into, it's time to take the exam, and that's weighted heavier, right? And that's really what we're doing when we go out and play a preseason game. You know, that's reality. That's what we do. And so when the lights come on, how do we perform in those environments? And yet, all those other quizzes still affect my grade. You with me? And so that's probably the best way I can describe it.
Is that as you make decisions, is that a hard decision to make, or do you think it just becomes obvious?
Well, look, I'd say this. I'd say evaluation takes time. You know, evaluation is not a one-time thing. Evaluation takes the course of time. And I do think over the course of time, I do think it becomes more and more clear as you watch it over the course of time. Now, if you're trying to make a decision after every single practice, then I think that clouds the vision. I think you're evaluating everything every day, and ultimately, as you evaluate, the picture becomes more clear.
That was one of the things you and I first talked about when we were putting this all together, which is why we decided to use this video. Because I think there's really kind of two key points there when he's talking about, you know, the college example. You take the quizzes and all that's supposed to lead you up to the big test. That's a large part of your grade. But however, all of it counts towards your grade, which is a good way to describe all this work we're doing now is going to help them once we get into training camp and it gets for real and they're really fighting for jobs or playing time or whatever. But the stuff they did here still counts.
Mm-hmm.
It still affects everything. And they have to, you know, and he didn't say this. And this may be something else we talked about. He may have learned the art of speaking through the media to his players a little bit, because if any of them were paying attention, going, yeah, you young guys need to understand that. The veterans probably know that and they understand that. You need to understand that this is just, you just came from college. You know how the grading system works. Same thing's happening here, even though you're a professional now. And the other thing, evaluation takes time. And I was very happy to hear that, because I think it's just the modern age with society. We all want answers. We want answers now because we're used to picking up our phone or our iPad or getting on a computer and finding answers. You know, Google it and there's the answer. Google, you know, ask Siri, who's going to be the Saints starting left tackle this year? You know, and but evaluation takes time. And especially this, they have a lot of evaluations to make and a lot of moving parts to what could work, may work, and what they're going to try to work. So I'm glad he kind of threw that out there, and I think he was using the media to speak to the media as well as the fan base with that, telling everybody, look, pump your brakes, because some of the ones that we edit out here were the questions about how so and so progressing and he was getting kind of aggravated answering that because
Yes.
it's like, did you not understand when I was talking about quiz final training camp? Trying to explain we're not done yet. This is just still part of the process, to use his own phrase.
Everything, and I guess football coaching style, yada yada. When he talked about not making the same mistakes 2 videos ago, and he's telling people about quizzes and tests and all that. I mean, he's speaking, yes, to coaches. I mean, to players. Yes, he's speaking to media / people like me and you making these videos. It's just he's answering questions the way they should be answered. Like it's used to be just coach speak. But
Yeah.
now that he's talking about process and he's talking about all these things, like you can link a bunch of stuff together. And I like what I'm hearing. I know I keep saying it that I like what I'm hearing, but it's a different Dennis Allen to me. It's a different person that behind that microphone talking.
Dennis, after all the kind of talk about like culture and stuff after last year, have you seen the buy-in that you wanted to see?
Yeah, look, I think it's been better. I think that's a work in progress still, but I think that's what this time of year is about.
Yeah.
I think this is about developing a foundation, developing some team chemistry, and I think that's what we're doing out here.
You mentioned buy-in a couple times earlier, and I didn't know if it was because you remembered this part was coming up and you were bridging to it, or
A little of both.
a little of both. Because the next part would be, or because if you weren't, then you're like, well, he's getting you to buy in.
He is getting me to buy in. He's getting all of us to buy in. Like progress is almost the same as process, and he's saying both of those words. And I want to link those 2 words together in this statement: process and progress. I think that process that he's trying to institute leads to progress.
Oh, absolutely. And my takeaway from that, and this is why I think we absolutely had to talk about player buy-in, kind of what we were talking about earlier, is you get the fan base, especially now a jaded, biased, and large portion wanting to see you fired fan base to buy in. Then I feel like you're finally getting the players to buy in. Because earlier we were talking about we weren't sure how many bought in the first 2 years of him running things.
Especially after Atlanta, we don't know who bought. Like you needed to redo buy-in after the Atlanta situation.
Yeah, because I don't want to put any words into any of the veteran players' mouths. So I'm going to say my opinion. I inferred from some of their comments after all that went down that week. They were a little not happy. Not necessarily what went on, but what went on after. Indirectly, you had a little bit flowing back towards the organization, towards DA and the organization, going, "Bro, that wasn't cool. We're not sitting with that." That seems to be all washed and cleared out. Buy-in is going to be part of it, because if there wasn't buy-in, there wouldn't be the excitement that. And again, that's the media and the people from the outside that are attending, saying stuff like, "Man, we hadn't seen this in 2 years." Well, buy-in is going to be a part of that, I believe, because I just don't think you had. If you had 53 men on the roster at any given time, you were probably lucky over the last 2 years if 30 to 35 were actually buying into what was going on.
No doubt.
I see some youth on our football team that I'm excited about, and I'm encouraged by. And so, and look, I think that's how you sustain success in our league, is by acquiring young, talented players and developing them. And quite honestly, I think we've done as good as anybody at developing players, over the course of my time here in New Orleans. So, and I see some young, talented players, on our team, and probably in particular offensively.
Guys that maybe you drafted last year starting to, that maybe they're going to make whatever step that is from the first year to the second year.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, the hope is always that they're going to, make the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2. And yet that's not always the case. And again, like, I don't get into what's the jump going to be in year 2. I get into, how's this guy going to get better today? And if you do that, then the end result's going to be closer to what you're looking for. And so I think that's where our focus is.
For that jump to happen. Just for that jump to happen for a guy like A.T. Perry, what did you kind of want to see him work on this off season to maybe put himself in position to?
Everything. I mean, he's coming off his rookie year. There's a ton of stuff he's got to, improve on. And so, again, I don't want him thinking about, well, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do. Like, just come to work every day and focus on the things that you're being coached to do, and do it to the very best of your ability every single day. And if you do that, then the jump that we're all talking about will naturally occur.
That was kind of self-explanatory. Oh no, go ahead.
He goes all the way back to the same mistakes, all the way back to the noise. Can care less about the noise. Evaluation about every level has this different evaluation process. And now he's telling you get better today, work on everything. I just tried to make a sandwich of all his statements or whatever, which is him basically. He's telling pretty much everyone what his process is, and it's not game changing. It's not going to something that the Falcons are going to get and be like, "Oh, we got you now," but he's just letting you know that how important it is not making that same mistake at practice. I mean that's what I see out of this. He led off with that, and everything is like hitting a hammer, hitting a nail, not driving it into the wood. And that's, I guess, I've never seen any of this in his coaching philosophy earlier, but it's obvious. And so far we did 7 or 6 of the questions. Everything is pretty much pounding that nail of don't make the same mistakes at practice. It's going to make it to be a better team.
Well, and also, and this kind of ties into the last question when the guy asked specifically about A.T. Perry, and we'd already kind of clipped some of the ones out when they were asking about so and so this, and he was just getting aggravated answering but his snap to would get better at everything. I think he was getting a little frustrated at that point, but in a way, he was kind of making the point. Look, I'm telling these guys, don't worry about all that stuff. It's almost like he was getting worked up, talking to the reporter, saying, you guys worry about all that stuff. But what I want them to worry about is this is what we're coaching you on today.
Mm-hmm.
Get better at this today. If you get better at everything we hand you when we're working and you get better at it, the process, and he said the process will take care of itself.
Yep.
You'll get the result you're looking for. We'll get the result we're looking for. I have never, and I agree with you on that, heard or the coaching staff under him in the last 2 years ever say anything like that, acknowledge the existence of, look, work on this stuff right now, and it will get better. What they always said was, like the first press conference we showed from Arizona, hey, that's on us. We got to get better at it and clean all this stuff up. Heard that for 2 years, and nothing ever got clean. It was still dirty all over the place.
Probably looked at it as a challenge. I would hope that he looked at it as a challenge. I haven't asked him the question, but that's the nature of our business. Is every year there's new people that are brought into the organization. Every year there's new competition, and that's never going to change. So again, that's one of those things that as a player, I can't focus on. I don't have control over the players that the organization brings into the building. I have control over how I perform. And I think that's where his focus really has been.
Oh, I love that one.
Mm-hmm.
I love that because, again, that was another one of those when they were asking him, and I think of specifically Pete Werner being worried that they brought in Willie Gay and Kaliki Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved his answer, which is basically said, it doesn't matter. If you're a player, you control nothing over who comes in. It's going to be competition. The only thing you can control, going right back to the previous question, is the stuff we tell you to get better at, and you go ahead and get better at it, and everything will take care of itself from there. So competition, this team needs it. It keeps needing to have it. So anybody who your famous phrase, if you're scared of competition, I don't want you on my team.
Yeah. He was speaking to two people, I guess, two things. He was speaking to, I think, the front office whenever he made that one statement, but he was also speaking to players whenever he says, win a rep, basically. Like, that's what I got out of that. Win each rep. That's how you win games. And that's what I took out of that.
Yeah. And I like that's the first time almost where he with the media, he was like claiming his turf. Those last two questions got a little, he pushed back on him hard a little bit, but just driving the point home, going, look, y'all may be worried about the competition at linebacker. We're embracing it. We want our players to embrace it. And the part unsaid, which you say often, if you're scared of competition, I don't want you on my team.
Mm-hmm. That was a great answer all the way around. I really like that answer he gave.
Yeah. It just shocked me too, that I was like, wow, DA is growing up before our eyes.
Look, they're two totally separate, issues or situations. Look, I'd say the similarity would be after the 08 season, we brought in a new defensive coordinator. I thought defensively we took on a new attitude. I thought we played more aggressively. I thought we played tougher, and so there was a little bit of a defensive culture change. And so the similarity would be that we've made some changes offensively, and maybe we see the same type of results in that fashion.
And I remember
He goes and he's pulling his best. Tim and Scott going back to Sean Payton. That's what I got out of that. It's like, I seen what Sean can do here. I think we're going to try something similar to what Sean did, and I'm hoping we get the results Sean got.
Sean, and the fact that the offensive coaching staff coming in, because it's really what he's talking about. It was like in 09, it was the defense that came in, Greg Williams and all, and that shifted a cultural change for better or for worse. But it resulted in like one of the first real good stretches of teams that the Saints had from 09 to basically 2011. And it kind of all happened at once, the symmetry of that. Well, my question is this being, and this is a valid question that kind of scares me if I find the answer is the wrong way. Is this change being precipitated by Dennis Allen or by the offensive coaches he brought in? When you start looking at the hired guns, they basically got in here to run that offense, coach the positions, over a century of combined very good football knowledge amongst that whole group. So even if it is their culture coming in and it's changing Dennis Allen, I guess I feel better going, well, at least somebody is. At least we're getting the change. But I'd feel much more confident if the team leader, the captain of the ship, was doing it.
Well,
and not being influenced by the new hire.
I think it's moving from the coaches, and you're going to start seeing it on the players. You're going to see Derek Carr start talking about it. You're going to see Alvin Kamara, because I think he's going to sign his contract, talking about it. That's on the offense side of the ball. I think defense is just your one thing that you know that you can work off of because you know who they are. But I really think this offense and coach speak, whatever you want to call it, I just think Dennis, once again, speaking to us, speaking to the media, speaking to the players.
I think I get the feeling it all is, but the only thing that scares me, if it is even a concern, is Dennis Allen leading the charge on this? Or is it the guy that might eventually replace him leading the charge on this? That's where the question mark maybe comes in a little bit. That maybe makes me a little, because then I'm worried about the buy-in and a lot of that stuff that we were talking about earlier.
if he's a snake oil salesman and this is all just BS, then yes, the next coach he's setting up for the next coach. We all hoping that's not the case, but at the same time, anything's possible.
Yeah, and I'm just bringing that up as a possibility that I'm not 100% drinking the Kool-Aid yet.
He just wanted the buzzkill.
Well, I'm aware of it in the back of my head.
Yes, I know.
That's all I'm saying.
Remembered how that team, personality-wise, did embrace at some point certain expectations, because we go in the locker room and interview them and we saw SB44 T-shirts and be special and smell greatness and all that stuff. So how do you balance telling guys just focus on the process versus, we can make that jump?
Yeah. Here's the thing. You feel it, you sense it, you see it. Look, I knew somewhere during this time frame, in 2009, I knew we were going to be a good football team. I didn't know how many games we were going to win, but I knew we were going to be a good football team. And so I think over the course of time, you get a sense for it, you get a feel for it. I don't think those things were, I don't recall. I mean, it's 2009, I don't really remember yesterday, but in 2009, I don't recall donning a Super Bowl T-shirt in OTAs. I think that's something that over the course of time, you start seeing it and feeling it as the season goes on, and yet that can't be the focus, because if you start focusing on that, you lose track of what's right there in front of you, and then you get tripped up.
Because Clint isn't
I'm gonna let
necessarily
both of them
as
play out.
fiery as Greg Williams back was in 2009, wondering how you've seen him still trying to instill that new culture or bring about a culture without maybe the pomp and circumstance of just being fiery.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, right? And it's not necessary the as you said it, pomp and circumstance, all the yelling and screaming. That's not necessarily what changed the culture. Okay, it was the attention to detail. It was this is who we are. This is what we are. And this is how we're going to play. And then it was holding the guys accountable to that standard. That was the difference. Now, how you do that, Greg Williams was, hell of a defensive coach. Tony Dungy was a great defensive coach and a head coach. I'd say they probably did it two different ways, but both effective. But the accountability factor is the key.
I think Greg used more words than Tony.
I would say different words.
Had to leave the last part of the little Greg Williams, Tony Dungy joke. Yeah, I would say different words.
That was my grandma cooking a gumbo and teaching me how to cook a gumbo. Different ways to skin a cat, telling me I can use a roux and not use a roux. Attention to detail, obviously, pay it that's on everything you do in life. You have attention to detail and holding people accountable. Like if people eat it and they don't like it, it's my fault. So, I mean, I know it's a strange segue to me talking about my grandmother, but that was basically my grandmother teaching me how to cook. That answer he gave right there.
Well, and it for him, going along with that example, yeah, it kind of sounds like that's their team-wide recipe. But the whole press conference, and I'm glad that was just like the final kind of series of questions and answers he had, because like the whole thing was leading up, we were finally trying to get to the point where he actually said the word accountability.
Yep.
Okay. Kind of danced around that issue just a little bit. And that was like you and I said, I did a video on it about a month and a half ago. Competition and accountability, the two things that we just kept the last 2 years questioning on this team. And again, not the whole 53. You could always see some of the players who were competing hard and accountable. And then you had some question marks. And you had some guys that you felt like, damn, they might be making business decisions, not necessarily football decisions out there on the field, if you know what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of those guys I don't think are really the ones I would question. It seems like they've gotten weeded out a little bit the last couple of years. I don't think there's too many of the ones that I would go, I don't want them on my team. I think most of those have moved on to somebody else's team and hopefully somebody else's problem. But it never should have happened.
No.
It never should have got to that point. And I would like to think I'm gonna drink a little of the Kool-Aid here, but this is the reason why I was doubting what the Frisco guys brought in. I brought up the new coaching staff, raising the doubt is Dennis. Even if they brought it, those answers kind of made me feel like at least he's buying into it.
Yes.
You know, it because he brings up because they were asking about the 09 and he's pointing out, he's like, yeah, but no, yeah, at some point we may have thought it was a really good football team and how far we were going to go, but it wasn't OTAs. It wasn't right now. It's almost like he's telling them, you guys are still asking the wrong questions. Do you want me to explain to you what's going on here? And I like the Greg Williams to Tony Dungy analogy because there's, like you said, more than one ways to skin a cat.
Yep.
And kind of the summation on why I like this interview so much, the way he questioned it, but he just kind of went up and said, look, the way Sean did it in 09 or the way Sean did it in 2017 or the way we're trying to do it now, it's all different ways. Just like Greg Williams was a scream and holler. I don't know if Tony Dungy ever screamed and hollered in his whole life, but they were both great at their job. And just bringing up, it's like, it doesn't matter how we do it. What matters is that we have the process in place where if we accomplish all the things he kept talking about, the attention to detail, the small things, focusing on the things you can control and not worried about the things that you can't control. All that is how we're going to arrive at the destination we're trying to get to. But there's different ways to get there. This is the way we're going to try to do it.
This whole system was 3 words: accountability, process, and confidence. He was confident this entire interview. He was laying the foundation with the media. It's already happened with the team for his process and accountability. If you don't pay attention to the process, you're going to be held accountable. So I guess that's the summation of all the
I'd agree.
9 clips, and that's where they stay with those 3 words.
And the thing of it is, this isn't the only interview like that he's given in the last couple of months where all this is kind of keeps coming out, kind of keeps giving the confidence. By nature, I'm a little more pessimistic than you. You've always been, when it comes to the Saints, a little more optimistic than I am, because I can go off the rails deep end.
Oh yeah.
Several times last couple of years, I did try to start the hashtag fire every effing body.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not by far the worst when it comes to Saints fans about going off the deep end. This is the first time in years, and I keep saying it, but this kind of stuff that's giving me a little confidence, like maybe I don't have to go off the deep end, at least not yet. At least I can. They're giving me something to hold on to buy in. There's that word again. Something to buy into until we get to training camp, preseason, and season starts. And then, look, if they poop the bed first couple of weeks, then all that goes out. The goodwill build up through all this summer is right out the window. And we're right back where we were last December, basically January, week 18, apologizing. I don't want to go there again.
I just made a realization about listening to his videos, and when you were talking just now, I was thinking about players and Carl Grandis in that video, whatever. He sound confident. I mean, accountable and all that stuff. And then even the Foskey video, which you did a whole episode on that. So I never actually put the 2 together, but I can see the players actually repeating his confidence, his accountability, and his process.
Yeah, the buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of 2 things. Either what you initially kind of leave this with the closing thought. Your initial, when we started all this, is going, hey, did they hire a PR firm? Well, if this is the PR firm that's getting Benton gave that great interview. Kubiak's given some of the other coaches have. DA keeps doing it more than once, which is really surprising me. But you're exactly right. Now you're hearing it from the players out there. So either it's the greatest PR firm ever that's basically brainwashed everybody into believing this, or they might have actually figured some stuff out. DA has finally figured out how to be a leader, how to get the even if he's following the example of the guys that came over from Frisco and everywhere else, just buy in, be that leader. I like a little pushback against the press. Nothing rude,
Mm-hmm.
but let it be known in those quit asking me this stuff. I'm tired of doing this. And then also talking about the stuff he wants to talk about. And then you're right, the buy-in from the players. When you start, man, if that many players, coaches, and the head coach could all shovel that much BS to fool a whole entire fan base, I would have to give him props off just for being able to pull that off.
The best snake oil salesman ever.
Yeah. So until it all falls apart or proven otherwise and it doesn't work and we're 0-6 to start the season or whatever catastrophe would have to happen for the goodwill, and it wouldn't have to be a catastrophe. A
No.
3-3 and 2-4 start might be enough. But until that happens, I they're not giving me a whole lot of reasons to doubt what they're trying to do here. In the past, and normally by the draft, they had given me plenty of reasons to doubt what they were trying to do the last couple of years. So we at least made it through the summer, the beginning of summer, without them doing something incredibly stupid.
Exactly.
So,
It kind of reminds me way back in the day. I know you hate crossing the streams, but back when Les Miles would always talk about the new offense coming this year, and I always bought in, and I'm still to this day wondering why I bought in. I'm just hoping that he's coaching like this, and I hope he's not doing his inner Les Miles.
Yeah, that's just now you're gonna give me nightmares. I was feeling all warm and fuzzy, and then you said that
threw the
name,
Les
and I'm
Miles
like,
in there.
Yeah. But no, I kind of see what you're saying. It was like you and I have said this in all of the last 2 years. They kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Now look, they're trying insanity. This time they're doing things different, and it could end up in the same result. Who knows? But at least they're not. If I would have seen a lot of stuff going on this season that reminded me of the previous 2, even 3, Sean's last year as head coach, the tone of this channel would be 100% different than what it is right now, because I would be screaming and hollering up a freaking storm. Like you can see on some channels and some personalities out there who follow the team, and I'm going, guys, have they really given you anything so far that I'm missing that caused y'all to act like we were acting in week 17, 18 of last year? Now that we had a reason to, because we weren't going to make the playoffs. But not now. It's not the same vibe, feel, and stuff we're getting from the previous 2 years. At least that's my humble opinion.
The PR firm might be Dennis Allen. I mean, some people are capable of learning. Some people are capable of seeing things.
Yeah.
Some people are capable of getting better, because if players can get better, like I said earlier, coaches can get better. And once again, I'm sunshine pumping again, but I truly think the end result is going to be better. I'm not saying he's going to be a Hall of Fame Bill Belichick coach. Don't take that the wrong way. I think he's just increasing his football coaching acumen.
Well,
and the looks are there.
Well, and the only thing is, and ended with this thought, because we're probably right up against time right now.
All right.
The only thing that I to go along that theme is like, well, if you want to get anywhere, he had to get better or he had to go. And that could be the simple revelation he discovered after going, man, I either got to become a leader, lead this team, and get better at being a head coach, or I'm out. I'm done. And not saying it will happen. They may give him another year, but at least he's acting like a man who's behind's on fire and his head's catching. So he make it happen.
That's what happens when you apologize to Atlanta.
That could, yeah, exactly. And maybe in retrospect, it was a good thing, even though, Jesus, it made me so angry. It really, really did. So
yeah.
So that's all we have for tonight. Give us a thumbs up if you're at least, I guess officially we're Kool-Aid drinkers, but I think the way the tone has been on the channel for most of this process, especially free agency and the draft, especially, we were buying in. And I really wasn't expecting the buy-in level. When we talked about doing this a lot, we figured there'd be a lot of ranting and raving and bitching. So far, we really hadn't had to do that. Maybe in small little doses here and there, but nothing as epic as we were expecting to happen. So,
Yeah, they've changed.
They've given. It's not the definition of insanity anymore. At least they're trying something different. So, hit a thumbs up if you're on board with us, at least for that point. How it's going to turn out, don't know. We'll find out in training camp, which is about 4 or 5 weeks roughly away, and that's definitely going to clear up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, till next time, I think we've got a wrap. I'm Tim. That's Scott. Peace out. Who dat?